Welcome to Turning the Page. I'm host Donnie Morse of Confetti Antiques and Books. And today on our program we have someone very special with us, GeneVanShaar. Gene, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Gene, you have been an author now for 3 different books. But before we get into your books, tell us a little bit about your history. Today, to come to the program today, you've driven quite a ways. You live down in Sevier, if I'm not mistaken, down by Ridgefield. That's quite a drive, and you've had kind of a unique story getting your books published, and that is you've actually started your own publishing company. So tell us a little bit about your history here in Utah, and then tell us a little bit about publishing.
Thank you, Donnie. I'm really happy to be here, and it was a beautiful drive up. And my history is, I think, interesting. It was interesting for me to live it. I've spent many years teaching in the church educational system, and about a year. You
mean seminary institute instructor?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, as both seminary and institute. And the last 7 years I taught were at the Utah State Institute of Religion. And 10 years before that, I taught at the Southwest Missouri State Institute of Religion. And I've had many opportunities to teach and to work with teachers. And about a year ago, I retired, and we moved to a beautiful canyon, Clear Creek Canyon, down in central Utah. And since retiring, I thought, well, now maybe I can finally get those books out that I've been working on for all these years.
Why Clear Creek? What brought you to Sevier in the first place?
Well, that's an interesting question. When we were in Missouri, we lived in the country, and we really enjoyed living in the country. And then when we moved up to Logan, we moved into the city. And after living in the city for a few years, we decided that when I retire, we want to move back to the country. And so we spent a couple of years driving around looking for the best place for us to move into the country. And we kind of had in mind that we wanted to have a place where there was a canyon and a stream and some of those kinds of things around us. And we found the best spot for us in Clear Creek Canyon. I
think you probably moved to the furthest point in Utah away from any higher education place. I mean, is there anything near there at all? Well,
Snow College has an extension campus.
Oh, okay.
There. And so as a matter of fact, I will be teaching some classes for the institute there.
Just couldn't stay away.
Yeah, I don't miss going to work, but I do miss teaching, and so an opportunity has come up to teach down there, and so I'll be doing a little teaching. So
your books, especially your first, Concise Harmony of the Four Gospels, that started well before you retired. I mean, the desire at least.
Yes. Many years ago I was teaching New Testament, and after I had taught New Testament several times, I realized that I really didn't understand a lot of things about how it all fit together.
It's kind of difficult. I mean, they don't tell the same stories, the four Gospels. I mean, it's bits and pieces in each Gospel.
Yes, and some people, when they study or teach the New Testament, they'll read all of Matthew and then all of Mark and then all of Luke and then all of John, and really you're starting over each time. And so if you're going to actually look at it from a sequential standpoint, then you need to say, okay, what did each one say about this event? Okay. And then move on to the next event, and by taking that approach, you see what each one of the Gospels says about that particular circumstance.
Okay. So there's been a lot of different commentaries or harmonies put together on the four Gospels. What's unique about yours?
Well, when I first started teaching and realizing I needed to understand more about the New Testament, then I started looking at the harmonies that were there, and there were some excellent harmonies that were available, and I began using those, and I became somewhat of a student and a researcher of trying to find the best harmony. to use in my teaching. And eventually, the harmony was published that's in the LDS Bible Dictionary, and that was an excellent harmony, and there are many others. But there were some things that were better about some. Everyone
had their
own little thing. And so I eventually said, look, I think maybe we should do this and this, but not do that, and I'd like to add this. And so I started developing my own harmony to use in the classroom. And I worked on that for about 20 years.
Oh, really?
And then I actively wrote it for about 12 years. And so by the time I retired, I had something that I had used in the classroom a lot, and that other people were using too.
And now I assume your students saw this, and what was their reaction?
Very positive. I had a lot of positive feedback from students and also from other teachers. But we were also, because of input from other students and teachers, able to make some refinements. So the idea was to take the best of all the existing harmonies, and then suggestions coming over many years from students and teachers combined with my own original research to come up with the best harmony possible. And you ask what's different, and I think one of the things that's different is in the title where it says concise harmony, that I've tried to fit the most possible information into the smallest possible space. And so the book is small enough to carry in a scripture cover, and yet it actually contains more information than books that are much bigger.
Okay. So now you had this book that you were ready to publish, but what happened?
Well, I submitted it to several publishers, and one publishing company said that they wanted to publish it, and not only this, but another one of my books, which we'll talk about. And we had a contract signed and everything. And then things were difficult in the economy, and the publisher contacted me and said, even though we have a contract, we've got to concentrate on books that we feel like have the widest market appeal. And my books tended to be more scholarly, and so not have as wide of appeal as some other books. And so they basically backed out of the contract. And the contract was for 2 books. And so then I wondered what I should do. And I submitted it to several different places and got basically the same answer. But there was an editor that I had worked with, and I eventually got in touch with him and said, what should I do with these books? Should I just let it go, or should I try to publish them, or whatever? And this editor said, I've read your books, I've been involved with you.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, he wasn't just an editor, but he was in church education as well, wasn't he?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and he also worked for this publishing company. And but I didn't know him from before, except as I met him. He was the editor that was assigned to work with me at the publishing company.
Sure. That
was going to publish my books. And he subsequently left that publishing company. And anyway, when I talked to him, he said that he thought, considering the market and considering that my books were more of a niche books rather than wide appeal books, that he thought that I probably would have a difficult time getting them published. And I said, well, okay, I can accept that. And he said, but he said, I've read your books and they're good and they need to be published. And so he said, I think you should publish them yourself.
So that was the start of Clear Creek Publishing? Is that how you say it?
Clear Creek Canyon Press.
Clear Creek Canyon Press.
Yeah.
And so you decided to go out, do your own thing, and you started with the concise harmony of the 4 Gospels.
That's correct.
Okay. Gene, we're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk some more about your other books. I'm Donnie Morris of Confetti Antiques and Books, and this is Turning the Page. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Turning the Page. I'm host Donnie Morris, and we're here with Gene Van Shaar author of 3 different books, and owner of a publishing company. Gene, we were talking about your concise harmony of the 4 Gospels. Quickly tell the public why your harmony is so much better.
Well, Donnie, one of the things is it has a table in it that makes it easy to see everything and take in what's happening very quickly. And then it's got extensive notes that go with the table, and it's hard to picture that while we're here talking about it. And what I would really suggest is that people should come in and take a look at it at the bookstore, preferably at the signing we're going to be having here at the bookstore. And I think most people, when they see what's there and they get a chance to see how it works, are pretty excited about it.
I agree. One of your other books, The Best of Joseph and Brigham. Tell us a little bit about what brought you to produce this book.
Well, for many years I've had a great interest in studying exactly what Joseph Smith said and exactly what Brigham Young said. And I've been more interested in their words than I have been in what historians had to say about them.
Okay.
And so I've read everything I could find about Joseph and Brigham, and I've had opportunities to teach about them. And I found out that some of the things that were my favorite things they said are in this source, and others are in another source. But there wasn't one source that had what I felt like were the best quotes from both Joseph and Brigham. So over the years, kind of similar to the other book, I began compiling.
So as you were teaching church education, you'd come up upon a subject you were going to talk about, and you wanted a quote from Joseph or Brigham, and you would go find that, and you'd compile these, and you had this big, huge notebook of the best of Joseph and Brigham.
That's right. And then I kind of picked the best of the best and brought those together for over a dozen sources for each one.
I assume church history, comprehensive history, journal discourses.
Yes.
Different journals, all kinds of different places.
Yes. And some of those things are easily available to the public, and others they're almost impossible to get, the sources that I used.
So I assume all of your quotes are, you have the source work there for them? The citations?
Yes, in fact, I usually, on most quotes, there's several citations for the quote.
Okay.
So that if people have access to one of the books, then they can do further study there easier. And
okay.
so instead of just one citation, there's usually several for each quote. And there's a few footnotes that explain a few things, but there's not much commentary. It's mostly just the quotes from Joseph and Brigham. But I have put them by category. They're arranged topically,
okay.
So it's very easy to find.
So like faith,
yes.
repentance,
yeah.
Pre-earth life, that kind of stuff.
Yes, those kinds of topics, yes.
Okay. So over your course of your many years teaching, again, I assume this was the second book that you were going to have published, so basically this and Concise Harmony came out at about the same time.
That's right.
And how have they been received?
Very well. You know, one of the things that's happened is that it's hard to get your books into the bookstores.
Yes.
And so I haven't been able to be able to get the books as widely distributed as I was like, but the people who have got them and have read them have been very excited, and I think that's been the best thing about publishing the books is that that people have access to some things that they didn't have before, and they're excited about that.
Okay, Gene, let's talk a little bit about your last book, Pillars of Truth and Freedom. Tell us a little bit about this book.
Parts of this book were written over a period of many years, and then parts of it have just been written within the last year. And I brought together some old and some new, and the book is divided into 2 sections. The first section is about agency or freedom, and the second section is about exaltation. or using our freedom to become like God,
Okay.
or Christ-like.
So you talk about the two parts of your book, Pillars of Truth and Freedom. The first part being agency, and I believe the first chapter is actually the Ten Commandments. And in today's world, Gene, aren't they just kind of antiquated and passé?
I think that some people feel that way. But in the chapter we bring out that in the New Testament Christ didn't do away with the Ten Commandments, but he reaffirmed them. And as we look around in the world today, if we apply the Ten Commandments, we get a lot better results in our lives and even in our countries than if we don't. And one of the things this chapter talks about is that one of the commandments says, "Thou shalt not steal." And there's a lot of different ways to steal. And there are even some governments now that are involved in things that are actually against the Ten Commandments because they're stealing the property from the people. And so the idea here is to say, this is what the Lord said, and this is what the Ten Commandments say, and how does that apply to our current situation, both as individuals and communities and nations.
Okay, I can see that. The second part, exaltation. Explain a little bit about that.
Well, there are several chapters, and the book is written so that each chapter can kind of stand by itself. But then as you go through the chapters, they also build on each other. And so in the second part of the book, we start with some fairly basic things that we need to make sure that we understand about striving to follow the commandments and receive grace and become more Christ-like. And then as we progress into the chapters, then we eventually begin talking about the teachings of deification from early Christianity that many Christian churches today either don't know or don't want to talk about. And then we eventually end up talking about the patriarchal order of succession and the divine investiture of authority, and a lot of doctrines that end up being quite interesting and deep, and yet have a lot of application to us eventually trying to become
doctrines that are deep yet are very simple to understand if they're explained to you in a way that's simple and straightforward.
Yes, and that's the idea here, is
Yes.
that there may be some things that people have been confused about, that hopefully this will clear up that confusion and help them to see how it fits in with the things they already know.
I wanted to talk a little bit, Gene, here. In the back of your book here, you have about the cover. The cover of this book contains more than 30 interesting symbolic elements. Some of them are obvious and others are obscure. Why don't you take just a second and point out one of those obscure symbolic references for our viewers, and then we'll invite them to come down and take a look at the cover themselves, and they can actually see for themselves, try to figure them out.
Well, thank you. The cover has a river kind of going through the middle of the desert, and some pillars on the side, and a light there in the background, and then there's kind of a far away shot of it here on the back. And there's been several people, everybody's not interested in symbolism and what all this stands for, but I had several very interesting experiences with people trying to guess what's there. And some are very good at this, and others have a hard time. And I'll just there's more than 30. There's probably more like 50.
Okay.
But I said 30 in there. But if you look very, very closely, partially covered by the sand here at the bottom, the pillar on the right says Yahin, and the pillar on the left says Boaz. And what's significant about that is in Solomon's temple in the Old Testament, there were pillars that you went through to go into the temple, and those were the names of those pillars.
Okay.
And so when you see those names on these front two pillars, and then you get the idea that you're passing through those pillars headed toward the light in the background, then that alerts you to the fact that there are things here that fit into the temple setting.
Okay.
Both with the ancient temples relating to the Solomon's temple, and also Egyptian temples, and also with modern temples.
Okay. Well, we invite you to come down, take a look at Gene's books. So he's got the Concise History of the Four Gospels. This is a wonderful book, fully illustrated, with the tables and the commentary on the Four Gospels. It really is a concise harmony. Followed by the Best of Joseph and Brigham, compiled and edited by Gene. He has compiled a tremendous list of quotes and thoughts from both Joseph and Brigham. Followed by his Pillars of Truth and Freedom. Again, there's over 30 different kinds of symbolism on the cover. Come down and see what you can find. Gene, you're going to be here at Confetti Antiques doing a book signing. When is that?
The book signing here at Confetti Books in Spanish Fork is on June 25th from 11 to 1.
So that's Saturday, June 25th. Gene will be here from 11 to 1 here at Confetti Antiques and Books, 273 North Main. Gene, we're excited to have you. We invite the public, come down, talk with Gene about his books, take a look at them. It'll be a wonderful time. Gene, thanks for being here in our program. We appreciate you and glad to have you. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited about this opportunity.
And we're really excited to have Spanish Fork 17 here filming this. Thanks again. Thanks for being with us. Have a good day.